All right, hey guys, this is Ursula, her strategy guide. So a lot of you guys voted on Ursula, so I decided to um, make a strategy guide for her based off your vote. So next I'll be doing Gaston because he got another vote in the last poll. That way I can just address that for that one person who voted for Gaston, so that um, his vote doesn't feel ignored. So yeah, I'll get that one done. So I'll get Ursula done, then Gaston, and then the week Gaston comes out, I'll have a poll out for another villain. In between there, I'll have a lot of uh, tabletop simulator videos coming out to you guys, so that should be good enough. Um, yeah, so this is Ursula. Um, she's very, I would say she's very difficult, but she's quite difficult. When I first started playing, I just couldn't win with Ursula. It was just really, really difficult. I ended up playing a few solo games of myself to get a feel for the deck and understand kind of the synergies of the cards, because Ursula is one of the ones where it can actually be difficult to see how you can stack things up. Oh yeah, without the synergies, this deck can be very hard. So I decided to make this rather I decided to make the strategy guide so that I can help you guys see what I didn't see when I first started. So, yeah, let's get right into it. All right, so this is Ursula's objective. So her objective is to basically start your turn with the Trident and the Crown at Ursula's lair. So essentially, the Trident and the Crown are both cards in her deck. And they both have some benefits to you when you have them out. So, for starters, the Trident, when the Trident is played, find King Triton and play him to his location. Attach Trident to him. When King Triton is defeated, Trident is returned to Ursula at the same location. So Trident really doesn't benefit you, but Trident makes it so that you can't just win by playing two cards. You have to actually defeat someone. And then the other card is the Crown. Look at the top two cards of your Fate deck. Either discard both cards or return both to the top in any order. So this is the one that can benefit you. So this is obviously an activate, so you're going to have to activate it if you want to use it. You can't just play it and have it work. So essentially, you need both of these cards at Ursula's lair, which is right here, like this, and start your turn. So if the Trident is being held by King Triton, like if it is, you can't win with it, because it has to be on your side. So it has to be here, as well as have King Triton. So basically, when you play this, you have to defeat King Triton and then have the Trident back here. So that's just kind of how it works. So let's look at the board now that you've kind of got an idea for this objective. So here at Ursula's lair, you get gain a power. You get to activate, which can be used for the Crown. You get to move an item or ally, and you also get to play a card. So Ursula's lair is pretty good. You get to play a power or gain a power at Eric's ship. You can play a card, discard cards, and even fate your opponent. So Eric's ship is also pretty good. The shore is kind of like a standard spot. You got two play cards. You got discard cards and gain 3 power. So the shore is a really good spot because with Ursula, you're going to have to be doing a lot of sifting through the deck. You're going to have to get rid of a lot of stuff. And here at the palace, I'll remove the lock token so it's easier to see. You have a move an item or ally, fate people. You get also 2 power, and you can also move a hero. So moving a hero is an important piece with Ursula's deck. So there's also a lock token here, but the lock token never goes away. Like with Captain Hook and Jafar, their lock tokens go away when you play a certain card, but with Ursula, the lock token just moves back and forth between Ursula's lair and the palace. So it's never gone, it's only being moved. So that can make it even more difficult because there's only 3 locations available to you at any one time. These 3 or these 3. So it can be very difficult to try and plan ahead, especially when fate cards can actually flip the lock token. But there are also some pretty good strategies you can use to basically use this lock token for good. So I'll get into that in a bit. But one last thing I want to touch on. You might notice there are no fate or no Vanquish locations anywhere. That's because Ursula doesn't vanquish. Ursula is a deck that basically has stuff called binding contracts. There's 4 different types. These get attached to heroes, and then you have to follow the text on the card to then get rid of the hero. So I'll be going over those binding contracts when I start going over the deck. But yeah, so essentially that's how Ursula works. So that's why this move a hero can be very important, because those binding contracts required you to move heroes. Alright, so with Ursula's deck, like always, I'm going to start with the allies. So she has 2 allies. I'm going to go over them together because they kind of go together in the movie. So we have Flotsam and Jetsam. They're both activate actions, so you're going to have to make sure you use the activate action at Ursula's lair, because no other location has it. So these can only be activated when Ursula's lair is unlocked, meaning the palace is locked. So to start, Flotsam, so they have, okay, so before I start, they both have strength, but they don't actually get used for vanquishing, so that strength is kind of useless, or basically just ignore it because it really isn't that important. So Flotsam, when you activate, you get to move a hero from Flotsam's location to an adjacent unlocked location. So obviously if you try to use that to move a hero to the palace when the palace is locked, you obviously can't do that. So yeah, so Flotsam can be helpful when you have a hero that you're trying to get rid of, because he can move it for you. Jetsam does the exact same thing. So yeah, so you have 2 allies that both can move heroes for you. So these can be important. Just remember that their strength is useless. So next we have the Trident and the Crown. Those are the only 2 allies in your deck, so these are now getting into the items. I kind of went over these already, but the Crown, essentially, when activated, you can look at the top 2 cards of your Fate deck, discard both cards, or return them to the top in any order. Now, when I get to the Fate deck, I'll tell you exactly what cards to get rid of with the Crown, and what cards you should just leave up there, because sometimes cards can be, certain cards can be bad in some instances, and some can be good in others, or not really good, but they won't really do anything to you. And then obviously the Trident basically just gets King Trident out there, so it's a necessary thing, so don't really worry about that. Next up we have the Cauldron. Gain 2 power for each binding contract in your realm, so this can be very good if you have a lot of binding contracts in your realm, but that also means you have a lot of heroes in your realm, and if there's a lot of heroes in your realm, the activate action might just be blocked. So this really only works if there's a lot of heroes in your realm and none of them are at Ursula's lair. So I tend to not use it because, well, for one, I never really have too many binding contracts out, because I tend to get rid of my heroes as I get them. Because one, it gets rid of a card for me, and it also allows me to do more with the 3 locations that I have unlocked. So Ursula is one of the heroes that you want to have the most. You want to have the least heroes out, because they can block your locations, and you can only move to 3 locations at any given time. So having one of those 3 blocked can be worse than having 4 locations unlocked and having 1 blocked. So yeah. So here we have our binding contracts. We have 1 red, 1 green, 2 yellow, and 2 blue. Now, the color corresponds to what location they are. So the blue binding contract When binding contract is played, attach it to a hero that is not at Eric's ship. So if your hero is at Eric's ship, which is right here, you cannot play the binding contract to them. They can only be played to heroes at Ursula's lair, the shore, or the palace. Now, why that is because you have to move that hero to Eric's ship to defeat it. So if you have a hero that's not at Eric's ship, play this blue binding contract to that hero, and then move that hero to Eric's ship, and it'll get defeated. So this is how you basically vanquish. You're not really vanquishing, but you're using these items to get rid of them for you. So with these binding contracts, Flotsam and Jetsam are important because they can move those heroes to the locations that the binding contract needs. Now, that's the blue ones. And so the yellow binding contracts are for if your hero isn't at the shore. If they're at Eric's ship, Ursula's lair, or the palace, binding contract can be played to them, and then you move them to the shore. So you might notice that the two binding contracts you get 2 copies of are also the same as the 2 middle locations. And that's because you're most likely going to be using Eric's ship and the shore to be doing a lot of your defeating, because Ursula's lair or the palace might be unlocked. So basically they don't want to give you 2 cards for a location that might be locked or be staying locked for some time, because then it could be slowing down your game. So they give you 2 binding contracts for the 2 middle locations, so that you can get more defeating done, and also probably just to balance your deck a bit more. So that's why there's 2 of each of these. And for the last 2, you have a red and a green one. These are the last 2 in your deck. I'll reverse them. Ursula's or the palace. If there's nobody at the palace, or if the hero you're trying to attach this to is not at the palace, you can attach it to them, and then you have to move that hero to the palace. And then this binding contract can go on anyone that's not at Ursula's lair. So essentially, this is what you have. So the red one can be played to any of these. The yellow one can be played to any of these. Binding contract to Ursula's lair, shore, or palace. And then this one, Eric's ship, shore, and the palace. So, yeah. So when you have the green one attached, move it to Ursula's lair. Blue one, move it to Eric's ship. Yellow one, move it to the shore. And then the red one, move it to the palace. So there's a lot there. There's a lot of information there. But, yeah. So this is very, very important to getting rid of your heroes, because there are quite a lot of heroes, and obviously there's no way to vanquish. So you have to make sure that you are managing your locations, because you might need to use this activate action, or this fate action could be helpful as well. So just keep those binding contracts in mind, and make sure that you are always focusing on getting rid of heroes, especially King Triton, because he will steal the Trident from you, so you need to use a binding contract to vanquish him, or defeat him, I should say. So that was all the items. Now we're on to effects. With the effects, we have Whirlpool, which moves a hero to any unlocked location. So this is a very simple way to just defeat a hero with a binding contract. That's what I tend to use it for. You get 3 of these, so they tend to show up a lot when you're sifting through your deck. So if your opponent fates you and there's a hero that you attach a binding contract to, assuming that that binding contract does not have Ursula's lair or the palace's name on it. So basically, if it's a blue or yellow binding contract, this will basically mean you're just getting rid of a hero, because you'll just move that hero with the binding contract to that location that it would defeat. But if you attach a binding contract to a hero that goes to Ursula's lair, but Ursula's lair is locked, the Whirlpool cannot defeat that hero for you. So either you move the hero closer to Ursula's lair, or you just choose not to play it. So I tend to use this most when I have a hero that I can defeat. I don't tend to use it when I'm just moving a hero closer, unless I absolutely need a location open, and this is the only way I can get that done. So Whirlpool can either help you defeat a hero, it can free up a location so that you can use an activate or use play a card or discard. So there's a lot of things that this can be used for. The next effect is Poor Unfortunate Souls. You may move each hero to an adjacent unlocked location. So this can be really strong if you have a lot of heroes with binding contracts, because this can actually cause you to defeat more than one hero in a turn. So if you have like 2 heroes here with a blue binding contract and 2 heroes here with a yellow binding contract, this one card can actually defeat all 4 of those heroes, because you can move one to the adjacent location, the shore, to defeat that one, move the other one to the shore to defeat that one, and then move this one to Eric's ship to defeat it, and then move the other one to Eric's ship to defeat it. That can obviously be, that number can be incredibly high, especially if you have ones with green, ones with red ones. So you have to make sure that one, that you're willing to pay the 2 power to do this, because if you're paying 2 power to just move one hero, it may not seem like a lot, but it could actually be incredibly beneficial. So yeah, Poor Unfortunate Souls has the ability to defeat basically as many heroes as there are binding contracts out, as long as the heroes are adjacent to the location they have to go to get vanquished or defeated. The next effect is Opportunist. With Opportunist, you choose an item or effect from your discard pile and put it into your hand. So this is an amazing way to get back your binding contracts. If your opponent for whatever reason is just loading you up with heroes, and you don't have many binding contracts to get rid of them, Opportunist can be a great way to get those back. Or another very, very important thing could be Whirlpools, because Whirlpools will allow you to move your heroes to vanquish. So if you need to defeat a hero but they have a binding contract on them, you can use Opportunist to get a Whirlpool back to then play to defeat them. Or if you need a binding contract to defeat a hero, you can also get that back as well. You can also use it to get it back, Poor Unfortunate Souls, or any of the other effects that I also use. Obviously, it would not be wise to use Opportunist to get back Opportunist, because then you basically did absolutely nothing. So if there's one card I'd say not to use Opportunist on, it is itself. Next up we have Grow Giant. You have 3 of these. Perform 1 available action at a location even if that location is locked. Perform 1 available action at a location adjacent to Ursula, even if that location is locked. So Grow Giant can be a way to use this even if it is locked. So obviously this assumes you're at the shore, because the card allows you to do an action adjacent, so you could either do any of these or you can do any of these. This does not say you cannot fate, so you can use this to fate if you need. So that's incredibly important. You can use it to fate. I tend to use it to use this because sometimes this is locked and I need to defeat a hero, or I would like to defeat a hero, so I actually use Grow Giant to do that for me. If you need more power, you can go ahead, though I would not advise using it to gain 1 power, because you'd be paying 1 power, so kind of common sense, but sometimes it can be helpful. So yeah, that's basically what it does. If I had to choose 2 things to use it on, it would either be this activate. If it's covered by a hero, it doesn't work, so remember that. This fate, or that move a hero. Our last three effects are change. Oh wait, I lied. Our second to last effect is called Change Form. This is basically the card that allows you to move lock token to either Ursula's lair or the palace. So, if it's at the palace, you play Change Form to change the palace from being locked to unlocked and locking Ursula's lair. So, this card allows you to just flip what gets locked. So, yeah, that's basically what that is. Change Form can have great benefits, like if you have the crown or the trident at any location, there are heroes that manipulate items, so these items can be manipulated by heroes, but if you have the trident or the crown at Ursula's lair, and you change form and lock them, essentially these cannot be moved. Heroes can't do anything with them because cards can only be taken or removed from unlocked locations. So essentially, if you lock items down, they cannot be manipulated. So this is basically, if you have both of these at Ursula's lair and you lock it, your opponent can't do anything because they can't discard anything here. They can't take these items. They can't move them. So basically, most of my strategy is to just get these both here and then lock it. Now, keep in mind, if you do lock one and not the other, to get the other one there, you're going to have to unlock it, put it there, and then lock it back if you want to do that. So if you want to lock one down so it doesn't get moved, and then when you're ready to move the other one in, you have to unlock it to move it in. And then it's your choice if you want to chance getting messed up with heroes or your fate deck, or you can choose to find another change form somehow and lock it. So yeah, that can be a great way. Another great way to get a change form, if you're looking for that last card you need to lock, you can use, not Grow Giant, you can use Opportunist to get a change form back, and then you can use that change form to lock. Though that would mean you would have had to have moved this on a separate turn. So that might not work exactly, but you could use it to lock them up at the end of the game if they're both there. So our last effect is called Divination. So you reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal a binding contract, then you put it in your hand and discard the rest. Essentially, you get two of these, they just find you a binding contract. Keep in mind you discard the rest of the cards, so if you do end up discarding a Trident or the Crown, remember you have 3 Opportunists to get them back. So that works. Since there are so many binding contracts, I tend not to use this unless I'm in a pinch and I really need one. So Divination can work. It has worked, but I tend to just kind of stay away from it unless I am so close and my opponent is close and I actually just need a binding contract. Then I will do it. But if I don't have the Trident or the Crown, I will not play it because I do not want to discard those and have to play Opportunist to get them back. So lastly, we have our 2 standard conditions. We have 2 sets of 2. So to start, I'm going to start with Trickery. During your turn, if another player has 6 or more power, you may play Trickery, reveal, and play the top card of that player's fate deck. So Trickery can be important if you have heroes that have 6 or more power, because it allows you to just basically play the top card of their fate deck. Now this does not count as being fated, so they do not get the fate token. So one person that really springs to mind with this is Prince John. He comes from the same box, so they might have been, this card might have come about because they were thinking, well, if playing against Prince John, this could actually be helpful. For whatever reason, this card is good because a lot of times a lot of villains will have 6 or more power in their hand. So Trickery allows you to just play the top card of their fate deck and slow them down a little on their turn. And then the last one is Arrogance. During their turn, if another player defeats a hero with a strength of 4 or more, you may play Arrogance, draw 3 cards in your hand, then discard any 3 cards. So, this is kind of situational. If your opponent does end up using or defeating a hero with a strength of 4 or more, you can play this, but chances are your opponent won't be vanquishing anyone with strength of 4 or more, especially early on. So early on, get rid of this. But if you can tell, this goes into a lot of what you can see, because I can't really explain every single situation that comes about. But if you can see that your opponent is setting up to vanquish someone with a strength of 4 or more, you can obviously hold on to this and then use it, because it basically allows you to just search through your deck some more. You can discard 3 cards that you don't really need at that point in time. Keep in mind that if you have an Opportunist, you can just discard 3 cards and then you can play Opportunist to get one of them back if you need to. So, yeah. With Arrogance, if you're discarding cards, don't discard Opportunist, because you can discard other things and then use Opportunist to get that back. Especially if you're in a pinch. So that is basically Ursula's deck. Now I'm going to go into the Fate deck. So with her Fate deck, you have several heroes that aren't really good. You have stuff like Ariel and King Triton, who are incredibly terrible when they're played on you, and this abomination Flounder I'll get to later. So very first hero is Ariel. When Ariel is played, you may move an unattached item from an unlocked location to her location. Until Ariel is defeated, Ursula cannot perform the move an item or ally action. So this is kind of what I was saying with these. If you have them at Ursula's lair, Ariel can be played, and then basically they move it from an unlocked location to her location. So they can play it as far away as they can, and then move it. And now you cannot move this away until she's defeated. So this can be a bit of a pain. So basically what I'm trying to say is, that's why you lock the Trident and the Crown together, or you lock one of them down, because now they're at a locked location, so her power doesn't work. She can't move items that are from a locked location, so this is why these are safe when they're locked. So, yeah. When Ariel is played, remember that you have to defeat her, so make sure you have a binding contract to do so. Next up we have Grimsby. When Grimsby is played, you may move the lock token to either Ursula's lair or the palace. So this is just basically a change form that your opponent does. It just flips the lock token. Yeah, I don't know why they give him strength. I guess so if other villains have conditions where you defeat a hero or something, then I guess it counts. Which could actually be why Flotsam and Jetsam have strength, because I think a lot of times there's certain cards in certain people's decks, if someone plays an ally with a strength of blank or more, I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, so Grimsby just changes form. Next we have Scuttle. When Scuttle is played, you may choose an item from Ursula's Fate discard pile and attach it to Scuttle. Yeah, so essentially, Scuttle can take items from your discard pile and attach it to him. So this is if you accidentally discarded a Trident or the Crown, this can take those cards from you. He can take this card from you, and then if you have, now you have to defeat him, which then puts it right on the top of the discard pile. So this can take the card out of your discard pile, so you can't use something like Opportunist to get it back right away. But a lot of times this ends up getting used to just steal a binding contract, because those are really the only other items in your deck. So Scuttle can basically be used to steal either the Trident Crown or binding contract from your deck. I don't know why he would steal the Cauldron, but if he does, obviously you just can't use it until he's defeated, and then it has to get either taken back from Opportunist, or you have to go through your entire deck again. So with Eric, when Eric is played, you may move a hero to any unlocked location. Very simple. This can be used to move something like King Triton with the Trident away from the location where his binding contract is, assuming that he's not at a location where basically he would be moving closer. So Eric says you may move a hero, so if, let's say, King Triton with the Trident was as far away, was as far away as possible from the location with his binding contract, obviously the opponent wouldn't want to move that hero to any location, because they might end up moving him closer. So basically, Eric just does that. He can also move anybody, but he tends to move people from farther away from their binding contract location. So when Sebastian is played, you may choose a binding contract that is attached to a hero at an unlocked location and attach it to Sebastian instead. So basically, he steals a binding contract from another hero. So if you have a binding contract on King Triton or Ariel, to obviously free up your stuff so that you can actually gain some power, or not gain some power, so you can get your crown or trident back, Sebastian basically stops you from doing that. Now you'll have to defeat him or play another binding contract to basically get rid of those heroes. So next up we have Max. If Max is played to Ursula's location, you may move Ursula to any unlocked location. Pretty simple. He tends to move you towards a location that he doesn't want you to use. So if you are going to be moving a hero or something, like if it's unlocked, and you're about to do that on your turn, they can move you to this location, so that on the start of your turn you have to move to one of these. So so basically with Max, if you're playing against Ursula, use Max to try and move Ursula to a location that would have been helpful to her this next turn, so that she can't go to that location when it becomes her turn, because then obviously stuff would happen. Next up we have Flounder. When Flounder is played, you may shuffle Ursula's discard pile into her deck. So I have some traumatic memories with Flounder. Basically, I did not have the Trident or the Crown yet. It was still in my deck. They were like one of the two bottom cards. I was almost at the end, and Flounder gets played, and my entire discard pile gets shuffled back into my deck. And since I can't find those cards from my deck, Flounder became a problem, because then I shuffled everything back in, and then I still couldn't find the two. So, yeah, Flounder was a real pain. And then I believe he got played again after I searched through another half of my deck. So then, basically I was set back twice to basically starting the game over again. So yeah, Flounder arguably can be one of the worst in this deck if you don't have the Trident or Crown yet, and they're at the bottom of your deck. So now, the one everyone will have at some point during your game is King Triton. The cost to play a binding contract or effect that targets King Triton is increased by 1 power. So binding contracts cost 1 more. To do stuff like Whirlpool, you're going to have to pay 1 extra to move him. But yeah, so when you play the Trident, King Triton gets played, and then it attaches to him. So obviously, if the Trident can be played at Ursula's lair, and so can the crown, so they can just be played to that location. They don't have to be moved. But obviously, the crown can be stolen by Ariel, or yeah. So the Trident, you can play it there, but King Triton then sits atop Ursula's lair, and then you have to either move him to Eric's ship or the shore, or to the palace for whatever reason you decide to put that binding contract on him. So, yeah, that's essentially what he does. So now I'm going to get into the fate items. We have 2 Dingle Hoppers. When Dingle Hopper is played attached to a hero, each time Ursula moves to this location, she loses 1 power. Pretty simple. So it's a way to set back your power gaining. So they tend to play it on locations you use a lot, assuming that they have to have a hero there. So if there's a hero at a location that you tend to go to a lot, Dingle Hopper can be played so that going there will punish you. So that has some bad effects with it. So the Snarfblat, so that has some bad effects with it. So the Snarfblat, when Snarfblat is played attached to a hero, the cost to play a binding contract on that hero is increased by 3 power. Simple. You're gonna have to pay 5 power to play a binding contract to the hero that the Snarfblat is attached to. Really simple. And then our last 3 cards, they're all effects, called Return to Form. Choose a hero with a strength of 4 or less from Ursula's fate, discard pile, and play that hero to Ursula's location. It's just a way for your opponents to get back heroes. They tend to get back heroes that manipulate you, like King Triton can't be done. They actually used that to get Flounder back. That's how they got Flounder back for the second time during that game. It can be used to get Max, which will basically move you to a location. It can be used to steal a binding contract. It can be used to move a hero somewhere, steal an item from your discard pile. It could also move the lock location. It can also be used to steal the crown. So basically everyone except King Triton gets affected by this card. So keep that in mind, that this card can basically do anything over again. So if you get rid of someone, remember, they might just come back. So that is the Fate deck and Ursula's deck. So now I'm going to actually get into my specific strategy I use for Ursula. So I've basically gone over 99% of it, but now I'm just going to put it all together into one unified idea. It is to plan ahead. This is probably a given for so many people, but with one location locked at all times, it can be incredibly difficult to plan ahead, especially when this location could get flipped when you get faded, or it can be difficult to kind of see where you are going and how you want to manipulate either the heroes with binding contracts, or you want to deal with the crown and the trident, because if you have the crown and the trident at this location, they can get stolen from you. So that's kind of an important idea to think about. So essentially, I always play these to the lair. Simple as that. I don't play them anywhere else, because if I play them anywhere else, that means I have to actually move them. And if Ariel's in my realm, I can't do that. So I tend to play them just to Ursula's lair to make it as simple as possible for me. And yes, it'll play King Triton to the top of my board, but I always keep in mind I have binding contracts. So I play a binding contract. I tend to use a blue one. If this is later in the game, I have Opportunist, and I most likely have already used a blue one, or I've discarded it. So at this point in time, Opportunist can be incredibly helpful to get that blue binding contract to play it on Triton. And then I can use something like Grow Giant, so that I can actually move him. Because if this location is locked and King Triton is here, you can't use this to move him away. You can't. So you either use Grow Giant when this location is locked to use this, or you use a Whirlpool. Now it'll cost you some power to play the thing to him, and then also be able to move him with Whirlpool. But yeah, so if you use Eric's ship, which I highly suggest, I don't suggest using the shore, or even worse, the palace, because then you're moving him all the way across the board, and then you have to move it all the way back, which can be too much of a hassle. So I tend to keep it really short, so that I can move him in one turn and then move it back the other turn. So essentially, you can either do this with a blue binding contract on him, or you can play it here, or you can play it here actually. So if you play it here, King Triton gets it. Then you can use the green binding contract on him, and then you can move him there to get the Trident. You can do that. So you either, I tend to use blue more often because there's only one green one, but if the green one is available, it's a very important thing that can help you actually just get it here in one turn. So yeah, that's basically important. That's essentially what you're doing. You also have Fossum and Jetsam, who can move heroes for you, essentially. So you can also use them to move King Triton. Basically, I play these here so that I can change form and lock them. Because when I lock them down, my opponent can't do anything about it. So what your opponent should be doing is trying to not let them both be there so that you can lock them down. If you have no binding contracts and you absolutely need one, remember that you have Opportunist, or Divination I should say, to get you one. I saw on Reddit there was someone who posted a picture of Ursula, and basically they had every single hero out on the board that looked like a complete nightmare, but if they had anything, this probably would have been the most helpful to them, because they could have then moved a lot of those heroes around to defeat most of them if they all had binding contracts. So Ursula can be completely bogged down with heroes, which is why in my strategy I tend to always just defeat them, even if it seems useless or pointless. Defeat them because you only have 3 locations unlocked, and having one of those locations blocked severely reduces how many things you can do, especially if you're at one already. You either have a choice between 2 things that can be useless this turn, or 4 things that really don't even really help you. Really the only 2 helpful things here might be these 2, because you might not have anything in your hand, and gaining 1 power is like iffy, and you might not even need this, or you might not even be able to play a card. So that's why I always just defeat when I get faded. That way they can't like bog me down and I can't get completely overwhelmed, because if I do get overwhelmed, like, this is terrible. You only have like this. Like here you can't even play cards. So if you want to be able to put something on one of these villains or heroes, you can't even do that. So you would have to then go here and then hope that you have enough power to play one, and then you can't even move them this turn either. You'd have to then go somewhere else. But if you go here, you can only play one thing to move them or to do something like this. So keep her open. Try and make sure that you have as many options available to you as you can. Keep in mind that when you're defeating villains, you're also getting rid of cards from your hand and your deck, so that can help you actually find these 2 cards. So by getting faded and defeating those heroes when they show up, you're not only just clearing yourself up so that you can do more. You can actually set yourself up to gain some more important cards like these two, or Opportunist. So yeah, basically, from the start, run through the deck, try and get as many of those cards out that you need. Binding contracts, blue and yellow are the ones I would keep. The red and green ones I would tend to discard if they're taking up space in my hand. Play these when you get them, because waiting will actually cost you, especially when they can take up some size of your deck. They can actually take up half of your deck at some point. So yeah, Ursula is one of those villains that can actually be incredibly lucky and get both of the important cards at the very start. But since they both are so expensive, you're not going to be able to play them both at the same time. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, ask it. I'll answer it. What else should I say? Oh, yes. Join the Villainous Discord. Join the Villainous subreddit. Join my subreddit. I post a lot of important things, like when new videos are dropped. If you're not subscribed here, you can follow that if you'd rather, to gain future ideas. I'm also probably going to be starting a new idea soon, where I'll be asking for people to submit some of their gameplay data, like how many times Ursula's won in this week or this month. How many times you played Ursula, how many players were there in the game, how many times did you win, just to gain some idea on how difficult they are, and then I can run through ideas like that. I have an idea like that in my mind. I'll try and get that out the next week or two. I'm still in the kind of brainstorming what I can do with it. So yeah, join my subreddit. That's where I'll be posting updates like that, because I don't have my community tab yet on YouTube because I don't have enough subscribers, and to be honest, that's totally fine to me. Yeah, so obviously check out my other videos. I do a lot of this stuff. Look out on the subreddit for a new poll, and I hope you guys enjoyed.